Well, hello. Welcome, whoever, wherever, whenever you are, however you got here, whyever you're here, welcome. Yes, I am struggling with Alice's Wonderland. I think the group that's doing it is up to about number 16 on their patches, and I'm still in the first half dozen here, and they're supposed to be all the same size, I think, right? They're all supposed to come out to like 6.5 inches. And look. No, they are not coming out all the same size. But I'm not going to redo each one as I go along. I'm going to do my best and then return to the ones that really need redoing. The first one, for example, I'm going to totally redo that. But I'm going to wait till I get further down the line, because after all, I am in transition from wonky to traditional, and Alice's Wonderland is very appropriately given as a good way to do it, because the arrangement of the patches is in a sequence from simple to complicated. And frankly, I really wonder, though, what they're thinking when, I mean, it must have something to do with the marketing demographics going on with that company, because Liberty of London is the most overpriced cotton fabric in the world. I'll be honest with you. Yes, it's nice fabric, but it works out to so much more than standard good quality quiltless fabrics from many other companies, including some of the higher priced ones that you buy because it's a particular designer, as well as because the fabric quality is up there. So to me, if you're picking up a sampler quilt as a means of learning how to move from simple to more complicated blocks, the most expensive cotton on the planet, $500 for the bundle of fabrics that they include in that. I'm going to be honest with you. That's for people for whom money doesn't exist. They have so much money they don't have to think about how much they have. That class of people, which is more than upper class. I mean, really. That is who they think is going to, and maybe that is who, but most of the quilters I see in the great and glorious land of Utopia, they're not up there. Even the ones who are, very well off, and they can get all the extra things and gadgets, and they live very nice lifestyles, but they still are in touch with the reality of money and reality. I mean, when you consider that everything that is made in terms of what people buy is usually sold at approximately 3 times what it costs to make it, because the first level of seller, which is the maker, which normally would be a factory, but even a craftsperson, they're thinking of what they paid for supplies and their labor. And they're looking around at what they need to live, if they need a place with a lot of special equipment, or if, like me, they're sitting in a rocking chair with a needle and thread. Obviously, I have a lot less overhead than a lot of other people. So the craftsperson and the factory owner, whoever, they take the cost of the material they use and the equipment they use, and they add their time into it, average out. I mean, even if you're, take minimum wage, which varies in this country of the United States from somewhere around $10 to somewhere around $15. So let's just say $10 an hour. So you figure it in. If you have somebody helping you, you got to figure their wages in too. And you're going to come up, most people will come up with approximately $300 for a regular quilt. You know, full bed size, $350 or so for a king size. And that's with good quality cotton batting and good quality cotton fabric. So Alice's Wonderland coming in at something like $450 to $500 just for the cut up pieces, which they measured out as fat sixteenths. Fat sixteenths. Okay, a fat quarter is you take a yard of fabric about 44 inches wide. So you cut it in four. You got 18 inches for the cut across, or 22 inches for the cut across, 18 inches for the cut down. And you got 4 pieces. It's a fat quarter. A fat eighth would be 9 by 11 inches. No, that would be, a fat eighth would be, you got 4. Well, anyway, a fat 16th is a sliver. To me, that's a sliver of fabric. And they put all those different fabrics in. You know, anyway, do the math. Who is going to pay $1,500? Because if you think about this being equivalent to a quilt on the marketplace, yeah, I know it's supposed to be precious and everything because you made it yourself and da-da-da. All those quilts on the marketplace, look at how many are actually made by individual artisans. They're not factory made. And everyone knows they're not going to be able to charge. And it's ridiculous. The value system is completely out of touch with reality. However, I did spend the $16 for the book, which that at least was a common average price for a hardcover book. It's a very nice book. So I'm not going to abandon it, even after I found out that the people pushing this tutorial are doing a sneak setup with political propaganda. And yeah, I know, get the tinfoil helmet out, right? Every time I tried to say, no, Denise, you gotta just let go of this stuff. Yeah. The people who murdered my daughter were left-wing politicals. Since I moved to Corpus Christi, I have faced the same people with their emails to every single official in my county practically received an email from that terrorist Democrat National Committee, DNC, Progressive Party, Liberal, Antifa, LGBTQXYZ. However you want to look at it, we all know who they are. And those are real emails. I was carbon copied that they were using my name and they were talking to these officials about me because I was still under attack. My daughter was murdered by a terrorist organization. They said it was suicide. The University of Massachusetts claimed it was suicide. The state police in Massachusetts know that it wasn't. But they answer to an essentially terrorist Democrat government over there. I mean, I feel as though I'm just like a Chinese person in exile from the Chinese Communist Party. The Falun Gong, who are hunted down to be used for organ transfers, involuntary organ donation. That's what the Chinese do to the Falun Gong. Those are Chinese people who practice Tai Chi and are, you know, they're just not going along with the program. I feel just like them when I look back at Massachusetts and the Democrats. And I think, Denise, you're letting your emotions run away. And I'm sure a lot of people, you're right. My emotions do run away with me sometimes. Well, I went into one of the Alice in Wonderland chats. Yeah, well, you know, let's just relax. I'm not going to say anything or show up. I just am going to watch the video and sew along while I struggle with my wonky challenge here. I wasn't listening for 10 minutes before the Greenland quilter starts introducing how they slide in underneath. She went to a quilt show, and there was a quilt by a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old quilt makers. And I think she said it was among the rejected quilts, or it might have been among the included. I don't know, because they were talking about both. And it was 100% propaganda quilt. These people seem to think that we're all stupid, that we're all going to believe that a 9-year-old child or a 7-year-old child understands politics enough. No, they understand what they're being told by the kind of people who, now the Greenland quilter, I thought to myself when she was talking about all the stress and everything of living as an American in Greenland, and she even mentioned in her just let us all let our hair down and talk chat in her quilting sewing thing, she even mentioned that there was some worry or anxiety over some of the dangerous things that happen on ships over there. And in that same conversation where she obviously was aware and everyone was sympathizing with her, she gave the exact information to identify exactly where her husband works and for whom. And the very next day, she put up a video showing herself at a demonstration for the people of Greenland. She's an American. Her husband's an American. They're living in Greenland. They want to be against colonialism? But what the hell are they doing sitting there on Greenland's land, taking Greenlanders' jobs, speaking on behalf of the Greenlanders? Seriously. That was also part of putting together the Alice's Wonderland, which I didn't know. I'd already bought the book. And I said to myself, when I listened to her, and as soon as she started talking about where her husband, I knew exactly which group she's part of. The same group. The same Democrat, liberal, LGBTQXYZ group that ran those emails. Not that they have anything personal against me. I'm just one individual. You'd have to be paranoid to think that. But the fact is, they have, in their discords and in their organizational setup, they have lists of hundreds of Americans as individuals. We've been dealing with them for years because my family also has dangerous jobs. My brother's retired now, but he was in charge of the land management associated with the Vermont Nuclear Yankee Power Plant, the Yankee Nuclear Power Plant. He was in charge. You couldn't pee in the Connecticut River without permission from him. And that's public information. You can look him up, James Matto. You're going to see two things. You're going to see an obituary for a 92-year-old James Matto. That's our dad, who died at the age of 92. But there's another James Matto who did not die. Who's a little bit older than me, retired for a few years now. It was before Katrina. Or no, it was after Katrina. Well, anyway, it was around the period of Katrina that I started to face these people. Because when you're on their list, you're not supposed to have a quilt business or an art business or anything else. That's why I left Massachusetts, because I knew I was under their thumb the same as any Chinese individual who maybe said a few independent things in college, which I certainly did. Someone who looked like someone that other people might listen to, which I certainly was. My family certainly was, is, till to this day. Highly connected in politics. The ones who stayed in Massachusetts are 100% immersed in the Democrat corruption. I'm not afraid to say it. You can't pick your relatives, you know. So I know what I'm talking about. And you can say, well, Denise, you're bringing politics into the quilting community. Well, you know what? I'm speaking openly. You can listen to me or not listen to me as you wish. But sneaking in, most of the quilters had no idea of what Katie, the Greenland quilter, was doing when she did that. And now she's bringing in children. Children and political propaganda in a quilt show. Which the propaganda in the quilt shows has been going on. Look at The Handmaid's Tale. When was that written? The 1980s? I read it when it was first published. And I remember it was kind of confusing, but interesting. At that time, it really didn't make much sense that the wife of the bad guy in the story, if you know The Handmaid's Tale, it's a kind of near future thing of where the society goes under some kind of dictatorship utopia and we're going through it now. Actually, we're going through it now, where young women of childbearing age are kidnapped and older women who become mothers, they don't have their own babies anymore. They use surrogates. That's what a lot of these wealthy women are doing. Well, in the book, they also form an art form around quilts. And there are several scenes in the book. I didn't see the movie. I don't know how much they included of that. But I've noticed it in the book. There are several scenes where the young woman, the heroine of the story, who is one of the kidnapped childbearing age women, who is forced into servitude as a surrogate to this family, the wealthy, upper class, you know, just exactly like the women you see now. Upper class, husband has some kind of engineering, management, or other high-paid job. If these women work at all, they work as some kind of, in charge of an NGO of some kind. Or they don't work. But they have this quilting stuff that they do. Overpriced, out of touch with reality type of attitude. And in the book, it's just kind of frustrating that the wife who's going to use and exploit this young woman as a surrogate doesn't see her as a human being at all. And she's involved with her quilts. And the author, is it Margaret Atwood, her name, I think? The author is almost prophetic in what she's doing, because in the 1980s, there was no vision of this culture that we have in front of us today. I mean, it was there in pockets somewhere, but it wasn't anything like what it is today. And the character, as I recall, I'm just remembering the story, I didn't review it, but what stuck with me was that the wealthy woman who exploits the younger woman, she's kind of put off to one side as not really responsible because the men control everything. And she's just going along with, well, this is how we do things. And her quilting is presented as almost as proof that she's in La La Land. And she and her other wealthy women friends who compare notes about the children they get through their surrogates, but then they spend all their time on these art form quilts. Right now, a lot of these, not the women you see in the quilting community, most of the women that you actually see in the great and glorious land of Utopia are normal middle-class types. And quite healthy and quite conservative and decent people. But there is this class that does use surrogates. They are the ones who are full of Botox. You don't see them in the quilting community. So there's a strange overlap with that book. You don't see, Botox brains in silicone boobs in the quilters community. But that class of people, you really begin to be aware of it if you're not 100% immersed in American life. If you're aware of looking at America from the outside, you see all the plastic. And a lot of the women in the quilters community are fully aware and trying very, very hard to maintain a healthy society, to hold on to the reality of providing our own environment around ourselves. And that's what makes me angry, is that these terrorists will sneak their propaganda in. You can't even relax in a chat. I know, I've promised people, and I generally limit my rants to my lives. But I was hoping I was wrong. I was hoping to feel, I said harsh things about the Greenland quilter and the people around her, what they're doing. Certain people, not all of them, a few of them. Most are totally unaware. They're not aware of what, as I am. I mean, I've been dealing with the situation with my family since the 1990s, to say when I became aware that stepping away from them, stepping away from the career that was expected for me, was a lot like trying to escape a cult. And it's not my family's fault. They're in Massachusetts. They're Democrats. They're no more aware of what's going on around them than that woman in The Handmaid's Tale was aware of what she was really doing when she exploited that young woman as her surrogate. And what I do know about this political group, number one, they put their activists in positions related to energy, oil, shipping. We started dealing with them when my brother was still working in that position in his career. And I faced a very strange assault. All I was doing was trying to run an antiques consignment service, I was studying web design. This was back before there were even cell phones. I mean, there were cell phones. They was like the BlackBerry. The Palm Pilot. Do you even know what I'm talking about when if I say Palm Pilot? That's a boomer flag right there. The Palm Pilot was a big deal. AOL was a newfangled system. People were doing Usenet. People today, yeah, techies don't understand. I'm dating myself, but I'm also showing that I was there. And I walked away from the technology because I knew I was too old to keep up with it. I didn't want to spend every hour learning a new technology. I had learned how to design websites. I could see a website when I'm looking at the code. I could do cascading style sheets. I could do all of it. But I was being replaced by the technology today where it's, you know, WYSIWYGs. What you see is what you get. Anybody can push a button, make a website. It makes itself. So I thought, well, I'm wasting my time. I'm already obsolete and I haven't even graduated yet. But I did have, I was a very successful eBay seller. I was doing consignments, and I wasn't even aware that I was being tracked. Because the one element that had come into my life after I moved to Texas, I felt like I had left people behind that I wanted to get away from. All of my family issues, I thought they were personal. I thought the problems with my brother and my sister and my daughter were because my sister was a narcissistic psychopath. My brother was caught, middle child caught between the psychopathic elder and a frankly damaged younger, which is me. And his wife became very quickly, was taken under the wing of the psychopath, my sister, so that she could control my brother, because being like this with his wife from before they were married. That's how narcissistic psychopaths work. So I saw it all like personal psychology like that. I was in Texas looking back from the outside, beginning to see, wait a minute. Some of the stuff I knew that they had done, particularly my sister, I had witnessed serious white-collar crime and didn't even know it until I was old enough and distant enough to look back and say, oh my God, she has, in order to do the job she had at General Electric GE, she had high security clearance with the Department of Defense because she handled defense contracts. My brother, you know, I never really thought about the ramifications of being who he was in terms of the land management around the Yankee nuclear power plant. I didn't really think it all through. I didn't need to. It wasn't any of my business. I interpreted everything on a personal level. But I had moved to Texas to get away from the personal crap because my sister was trying to use me to cover some of her financial shenanigans. And I didn't realize what she was doing. I just knew I didn't want any. And also the emotional stuff. She is a psychopath. I mean, without all this politics, she would still be a dangerous person because she is a psychopath. And I couldn't get my daughter away because my daughter was an adult, made her up her own mind. Her friends were in Massachusetts. She didn't want to leave. But I left. I said, well, you're grown. And it was when she decided she wanted to leave, and her fiancé both wanted to leave and join me down here, that they were both killed. My daughter didn't die alone. I only speak of her because I respect the fiancé's family, who also were told it was a suicide and who also said, no, it was not a suicide. But we're up against powerful, powerful people. And this whole thing with children, when my business was attacked, my eBay business was attacked in, I guess it was about 2006, somewhere there it started up. And I just thought, well, this is business, it's harsh, it's competitive. The people who came in under the radar tugged on my heartstrings about children. They were running a child rescue scam, a fraud. I didn't know that's what they were doing. They wanted me to participate, to help out. I said, well, I don't have money. I can't donate. Sorry. But, we see that you can express yourself and you're a pretty good writer. And we need someone to help write articles for our brochures. So, yeah, sure, I'll do that. The Houston couple. But they were also working with somebody who had approached my brother, and I didn't know it. Because he was targeted because of who he was. And also because the family does have money. I don't. I'm estranged from that family, and I'd rather be a pauper than touch 1 cent of their money, their blood money that they have, now that I understand where it comes from. But this group was doing something, pulling on the heartstrings about children caught lost in the cracks of the welfare child foster care system. And I said, sure, I'll write the article. Send me the information and I'll write an article. Well, they sent me what they said were case studies of actual custody cases that ended up that way. Now, a lot of that information you can't make public. You don't even have access to it, and if you do get access to it, you're not supposed to make it public. But if you're writing an article, you still need to know. So they sent me this stuff that just didn't add up. It looked like I was looking at 2 or 3 different cases that didn't have anything to do with each other, and I couldn't even tell which ones were real. So I said, listen, I know I can't get the information on a custody fight, but there is at least a docket number and a notice that a judge made a decision to award custody or send the child into foster care or whatever. I need that. Well, they didn't have that. And in talking with the woman, she says, well, you don't understand. What we're doing is we're setting up alternative adoption. What? What am I involved in? What is alternative adoption? She says, we make sure the system isn't used. So you're adopting children without using the authorized agencies. Out of here, gone, not helping you, goodbye. That's all I wanted to do was just forget I ever ran into these people. Because all I knew was what they said, and I didn't know. I said, I don't want to know anymore. I am not helping you. I thought that was the end of it. Because I came from that kind of family where you realize someone's doing something that's none of your business. You say, oops, and you back your way out the door. And it's like it never happened. But they don't. Democrats, the DNC, the LGBTQXYZ, those people, rainbow, the pedo flag in Sarah Filke's quilt, the pedo pastel thing in the rainbow, where they're standing up for the right to have adult relationships with young children. And we're supposed to pretend we don't know what's going on. And this group that was bugging my brother, I only found out about that after I had said to this group, hey, I'm out of here. Just forget it. But they couldn't forget it. Instead, they posted every personal thing they could find about me in a website that no longer exists but was run by the Democrat Party at the time. And I didn't think that was a bad thing at the time, because I didn't recognize how much the Democrat Party was involved with what my family was doing. As I said, I thought it was all personal. My sister was a jerk. My brother was a weakling. And I just wanted out of it. I didn't understand the corruption that came from the Democrat Party and all of that. But they were after my brother because of his position related to nuclear power, control of the materials that come out of that plant. I mean, he didn't exactly control it, but he certainly was the person corrupt people would want to talk to if they wanted access to nuclear waste products. And the same group that did this thing, it was when they put my name out there and called for me to be silenced. And it was a very unnerving way they put it. And I knew, because as I said, I was studying web design. I knew from the courses I was taking that there's a window of time between when somebody posts something and when the search engine picks it up. And it was part of my lesson that if you are running a web service, and I did have an ISP at the time. I had a server capable of serving 300 websites. And it would have been my responsibility, if it happened on one of my websites, that somebody posted something like what was posted about me. It would be my responsibility to get it down before it enters the search engine so that the person wouldn't be endangered. So I knew how that worked. I knew exactly which code had to be changed in the website to make it disappear. And the website owner wasn't listening to me. So I contacted my brother, who was a state official. His position with the nuclear power plant made him an official in Vermont. And he was also involved with FEMA, federal. After his retirement, he became an adjunct professor, not emeritus, but an adjunct professor brought in for guest appearances in the urban planning department, because that was his expertise, was urban planning. That was how he got to be where he was. And I contacted him and I said, Jimmy, would you please tell them to take that down? He says, you were stupid to get involved with web stuff. Told you to stay away from the internet. I said, oh, come on, I didn't know why. I have to earn a living. And he says, well, I said, anyway, I said, if you think I'm being stupid, that's fine. Tell them you hate your sister and you think she's stupid, but you want it down. They won't hesitate, because they don't know if you'll stick up for me or not. They just know. They know that I don't have the money to defend myself. I can't hire a lawyer to do it, but they know that you could if you wanted to. I said, so I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking you to take the stuff down, to tell them to take the stuff down, because they won't listen to me. Well, it was in the course of that conversation, when we were trying to figure out why these people were targeting me, he made the remark about having been targeted himself. He pointed out there was the stuff that had happened in Vermont that I must know about. I said, no, how could I know about it? I'm in Texas. Vermont stories from the Vermont newspapers don't appear down here in Texas. But he had received an award from the Vermont legislature. There were other stuff going on with the nuclear power plant. He was always being called in and asked to answer this or that question about what was going on. He was an expert that they would turn to, an authority that they would turn to. So he said that because things were going on up there, he knew that this was probably the same people. And then I found out later that a specific individual, one who's very active here in YouTube, not in the quilter community, but out in the wilder sections of this strange world, that person was directly involved with this child rescue crap that I was being hit with. And that's why I also noticed that the same group were mentioned by the woman who reads from Proverbs who started showing her grandchild on camera. She didn't say anything about the grandchild, but she did say that she was reading Proverbs in response to being challenged to do this. And she's, that little cluster of people. That's why I'm speaking up, because you have no idea. You think people are being nice and sweet and biblical. But I'm seeing the pedo molester flag that's right there in Sarah Filthy's quilt. She doesn't talk about it. She's talking about all the stuff that's perfectly innocent. But why would any intelligent individual today include that as part of the quilt border? Just like Katie, Greenland Quilter. Oh, she's just a nice person doing her thing. These people that are so focused on the oil ports, they have pulled terrorist actions here in Texas. They pulled one in Carolinas. A member of that group was arrested for causing the port of Charleston to be evacuated by calling in a prank call. His brother is the one who sent the emails with my name on it. Both of those people were fully aware. They were probably part of the crew that were trying to get me involved with that so-called child rescue writing those articles. It was totally unbeknownst to me and to my brother that anything was going on. We weren't talking to each other that much. I mean, we were in touch, but we weren't like social to each other because he's up there, I'm down here, and we are different branches of the family. So we had no idea. It was a tag team. And he put two and two together right away. He says, well, I said, they seem to, all I know about these people is they seem to know that we're related. I think they're just going off my last name and saying that, thinking I have the money that, frankly, I don't, and I'm not asking for any. And he said I was right. And he told me what had happened. And it was a while before I put some more two and twos together. Now that was the early 2000s. It was 2019 that those emails were going out. But all the way up through there, I was dealing with these people all the time. There's a lot more going on now that you're looking at. Keep watching what's going on with these Hollywood people and the politics and the social media. How they're using social media now because Hollywood's gone. But they still have pushed the propaganda. And now in social media they get direct contact to regular, ordinary people. Those children, Katie the Greenland Quilter, and Cherry, and the other Alice's Wonderland quilt pushers, those children did not understand what they were saying. You were so proud of how deep it was. No. They were being exploited to make a political statement that they have no idea even is. And the people in the quilting community who think everything's about being nice, don't be exploited. Denise Matteau, over and out.